when last we left our brave adventurers, they had just started to sail into Baldur's Gate, its large cliffs rising up above the water, its more lower quadrants where the less fortunate live on the outskirts just starting to sail by. And in that area they see many large raised white tents in the fields just outside of Baldur's Gate. They sail into Baldur's Gate and reach the docks, and some of the more observant members realize there's a few men who are watching their boat very intently. When they reach the docks, these three individuals introduce themselves as simply messengers here to escort the party to Silaban's shop, their contact, and he is eagerly awaiting them. The party agrees and follow him in. When they get to this big open-aired shop with a second story that's enclosed like sleeping quarters, but the lower is almost completely open, and there's people inside with big lists and people running around grabbing things from larger crates and stuffing them into smaller crates, and in the back you've got, we have 3 orders of rope that need to go with the caravan tomorrow. We've got 16 horses that have got to go with the caravan the day after next. We got 4 more caravans coming. We're going to need to make sure we got enough tack and we got some dragon. And he's constantly reading these things off, and you can read going on. This is Silaban, a very well-to-do businessman who, with a little, but they're not quite sure of his exact origins. Almost like he's purposefully plain. They're introduced. He introduces himself, and he looks at the party and goes, "But wait, before we converse, is one of you Fire?" And our tabaxi rogue says, that would be me. Fire, you have an appointment with Needles. And mentions one of the individuals who escorted them over to take her down to talk to Needles. She has an appointment. Fire agrees, a little mystified, and we'll get back to her in a moment. They retire upstairs while they talk with Silaban, and Silaban fills them in on what he knows about the cultists and what he's managed to gather from Baldur's Gate, as well as from Althrun, and when he sent messages and word, the party fills him in more on what they know and the timing and the fact that they're pretty sure they've beaten the hoard of gold coming up from the south from the cultists, but has he seen anything? He's not sure because, I mean, they're disguised, but the timing doesn't seem right. They're pretty sure. They're almost 100% sure that they've beaten them there by a few days by taking the river as opposed to following the caravans coming up from the north, or from the south to the north. So they've beaten them by a couple of days. They've got some time. Remy, at this point, asks Silaban about the large tents that she saw when they were sailing in. Silaban describes them as a new religion that's popped up. They're looking and holding some congregations, holding some recruiting, basically looking to build their ranks. Doesn't know much about it. They've been stupid busy, and they haven't been but if she talks to Steve. Steve was late to work because of one of their parades coming through where they were proselytizing and trying to get people to show up and handing out flyers. Remy does this. She goes down there. Silaban takes back over for Steve and shouting orders and stuff, and Steve says exactly that. He goes, "Well, yeah, I was late to work because I was coming across and they had blocked the whole road. There was just guys in the long robes and they were handing these flyers out, talking to anybody who would listen. I mean, in fact, actually, if you weren't even listening, I got 2 of them, shoved them in my face." And Remy asks if he has one, and he says, "Well, I think I threw it." And he goes back and he finds, pulls one out from the kindling pile where he'd thrown it, and he hands her the flyer. And sure enough, it's the same flyer that they had seen when they're in El Terrell with her picture blazing on it. She quickly tucks it away. So sure enough, it's her father again. So, maybe we hadn't let that loose. Well, now you know. The party decides that they're going to investigate this. She does actually at this point say that this is her father's doing. That she's not really lost, but she's infuriated by the fact that he's using the fact that she ran away as a way of promoting the religion of the fact that he had given up the sacrificing his own daughter. So they go and inspect it. We're going to pause here, and we're going to jump back to the fact that we split the party up a little bit, and we now go to Fire. Fire is escorted over to this little tiny shack that's literally almost like a lean-to that was stuck between 2 buildings. Like there was an alleyway between 2 buildings, and somebody shoved like a roof over the top of it and a backdrop onto it, and a front door. And the front door is like literally the whole width of the building. It's like, and you're inside. And inside is this crouched over huge giant of a man covered in tribal tattoos, with a little workbench beside him, and he's sitting on a stool, and his knees are all up to him, and he goes, "Oh, come in, come in!" And she goes, "Oh, you fire?" It's like, "Yes, I'm fire." I was told that I'm supposed to give you the mark. And as funny as it sounds, Fire just goes along with it. She's like, "Okay," and she puts on, "I need your left or right." Right? And "Okay, put your right arm here." And she puts it on the bench, and he proceeds to pull out a razor, and he shaves like 6 inches of her forearm off of her fur. And then he goes, "No, this is going to hurt." And he takes these little rakes and dips them in ink and puts them on her arm and goes, "Remember to breathe," and starts whacking at it with a hammer. She passed her constitution saves and didn't lose her lunch. And about an hour and a half to 2 hours later, she now has the symbol of the gauntlet emboldened and tattooed on her forearm. And it's shimmering a little bit, even though it's black ink on her pale actual skin. It shimmers a little bit. And he explains that as a member of the gauntlet, being a group that sees righteousness, knows that sometimes they arrive a little too late. So this tattoo will allow her to heal somebody once per day and bring them back. She's ecstatic by this, by the way. Just, "I can save people. I got a healing spell in my arm." And he goes, "Oh, but let me help you, because this is very obvious." And he reaches over and he takes a salve and he smears it on it and he rubs it into her forearm, and she screams a little bit, but then it really starts to itch a lot because all of her fur is suddenly growing back through and it grows out. Except wherever the fur grew through the tattoo, her black fur turned white. So she still has the faint symbol of the gauntlet still on her forearm, now in white fur. She's stoked. And she proudly marches out, and the salve also healed it up, so the instant tattoos. Magic's awesome. And they leave. She rejoins the party after the party fills her in on what's going on, and then they are now going to go off to inspect the tents and see what this is about, and see what they can find out about Remy's past and Remy's father and this religion that he's been pushing. However, Callie and Lutau decide they're going to stay back at the boats and just to keep an eye on things and ready themselves. So at this, now we have Remy, and we have Fire, and we have Birkin, and we have Nahis, and Eddie walking down. Actually, no, I think Eddie went back to the boat. So we have basically the ladies are all going to check on the religious gathering on the outskirts of town. They make their way there. They're greeted by a few brothers as they introduce themselves, very plain. No names are exchanged. They just introduce themselves always brother, 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 brother. And they answer the questions of the party. And the questions are like, what is it about? That the organization of the All-Seeing Mother is about giving up of oneself to better everybody else, and that once you have found that you have nothing left, you have nothing to lose, so therefore you can find enlightenment, and they explain this a little bit. Totally the party doesn't buy it, but that's exactly what they're saying. And the brothers were like, "Well, please come and sit down," and they do, and they were just in time for one of the sermons, for lack of a better term, that was about to be given. And so they enter one of the largest tents, and they take their seats, and it's set up like an amphitheater. There's a stage at one end, and then rows of seats made out of various benches and hay bales, and kind of like it was thrown together, but also like they've kind of been scrounged from all over the place. But it's a very plain tent. The stage itself is very plain. There's a couple of there's like lanterns on the posts going down this large tent to give it some light. As it reaches the time, people have filtered in. A lot of Baldur's Gate's less fortunate are in this tent. Time passes a little bit, and then the brothers all start walking in these plain gray and white, grayish robes, and they stand lining on either side. The brothers close the tent flaps, and the tent is now darker. They stroke the braziers towards the ends of the stage to lighten that area up, and this older man with a graying goatee and close cropped hair heavy set eyes, definitely some age wrinkles and some under his eyes, around his mouth, takes center stage behind this very plain podium, proceeds to give a sermon about the all-seeing mother and the benefits of giving everything up, and that if you give everything up and release all of your worldly possessions, you will have nothing binding you to this world, and you will reach enlightenment, and that by giving up of those objects, we can then use those objects to help spread everything else. So when you have nothing, you've got nothing to lose, and we will help support you, and we will give you all that you actually need, which is very little, to be able to be humble and to reach that enlightenment. And he also says that if you truly believe this, you will make the ultimate sacrifices, giving up all connections. And while he does not wish everybody to do so, but to prove that he speaks the truth, he says that he even has given up the most of all of his congregation, including his own family, and more specifically, even his own daughter. And at this point, a banner unveils behind him, and it's a full-on picture of Remy in a ball gown. Same one from the flyer, but big and emboldened, hanging behind him. And he ends his sermon. Brothers open the tent flaps back up again. Light streams in, more than just the torch lights and the lantern lights. Remy tucks her hood closer over her head and is gone. Scoots out past everybody and is in Baldur's Gate, up the trail and into Baldur's Gate before anybody really knows what happened. Arkin and he, seeing her go. Fire goes with her, by the way, but they need to know more. So they corner one of the brothers and say that they're very interested in possibly joining, but they have some concerns about this sacrificing part, and they would love to have a longer discussion with Father Robert. They are told, unfortunately, that Father Robert does not see individuals. He's more than happy to answer any questions that they have if they would be so inclined. They really want to talk to Father Robert. Well, unfortunately, that's only available for people who are. Have got very important people, and he's got just very, very busy. And they offer at that point to make a donation. And possibly give up some things now if that would give them a chance. And he says, yes, that's a possibility. And he goes, give me a moment. And he leaves, and he comes back, and he says, okay, we can arrange something this evening, so come back at dusk, and we will have Father Robert will be available to chat with you for just a few moments, for a private meeting. Party agrees, they go back. They go back to Silvan, they pick up Remy. Remy is pissed and very upset. She knew that he was using her, but not to that extent, and the fact that using her running away, oh my gosh, over the top, pissed off. They go back to Silvan, they talk, they figure things out. Now, at this point, they decide that maybe it's best if Remy gets a disguise, so someone loans her a circlet that will disguise her. It casts a disguise spell a couple of times per day. And so she puts it on and disguises herself as a very plain person, very plain human, I think is what she decided on. And they wait till dusk, and then she disguises herself, but then they make their way back down to meet with Father Roberts. At this point, they realize that it's very empty. A lot of the people who'd been there before are gone. The brothers seem to have also dispersed, but it's getting towards dusk. They might be, getting dinner or something. It's just, there's only one or two and a couple tending the fires, and they greet them and say, oh yes, Father Robert is expecting you. Please follow me. And they lead into a tent, and they take her to one of the back smaller tents. And I laid in, and inside is a single bed and a table with one chair and a couple of chests, and that's it. This is a very small tent. And they're milling about for a few minutes, and it looks like this is Father Robert's actual tent. And as they're investigating a little bit and kind of poking around a little bit, seeing reading over what's on the desk, the plain-dressed brother walks through and says, I see you've returned. I'm afraid I can't let you live, for you're already dead. And his whole body shimmers and disappears, and then leaving behind this very cloaked, dark, leather-studded armor, face wrapped in a wrap, very stealthy, very dark individual, pale skin underneath, and he immediately pulls out a short sword and charges across the room. Luckily, they had been ready for this, and Nahis had been standing right by the door. He takes a bunch of hits from both Nahis and from Arkin as he charges at Remy. He stabs Remy. Remy's poisoned. Fire heals Remy. He stabs her again. He's focusing entirely on Remy, but the rest of the party is beating on him. He's trying to duck and dodge, but he manages to poison her again right before the party does actually eliminate him. Remy heals herself again with another healing potion, and Arkin heals up with low damage. He was totally focused, and Remy did take a fair amount of damage from both the slashing and the poisons. They search the rest of the room real quick. They take a look outside. Nothing's really changed, and they find some notes. They find the chests are locked. They pick the locks real quick, and they find similar regalia to what Faroum was wearing when they met him in the hatchery. Very ornate, dragon-esque dressed clothing in purples and dark colors, with daggers and swords, as well as they find an amulet and a ring that they sense have magic to them, but they can't identify it, so they take those. They also find a letter on the body of the assassin. It is a quickly drawn contract to eliminate an individual, and then there's another copy of the pamphlet with a circle around Remy and anybody with her, so we'll kill anybody, any word that could be spread. They also find 500 gold on the individual, and he's drow, he's a dark elf. They search the rest of the room. They find a few other notes, but nothing incriminating, unfortunately. Remy does decide to leave a note, though, saying, "Nice try." And they leave and make a beat. But when they leave, they realize the brothers that they had met on the way in are no longer there either. And a quick looking around the camp realizes the tents are there. The seating that had been arranged is still there, but all the wagons are gone. There's no brothers. So they beat a hasty retreat out of the encampment and make their way back into Baldur's Gate and back to Silabons. They check in, they return the circlet that Remy had borrowed. They then make their way back to the boat, mystified at how they knew, unless he just assumed who they were, and they leave. And they go back to the boat, and that is where we ended for the evening. It was a nice little jaunt down backstory lane, shall we say. It was a wonderful night. I loved it. It was my chance to tie in Remy, who's being played by my wife, and that's right, actually at this point in time I have gotten permission from everybody. So Amanda, my wife, is playing Remy, and this is her very first D&D character, so the fact that this was my way of tying in this backstory that she come up with of her abusive religious father, and tying it into this story really made her night. I was really happy I could do it and get it tied in. The little bits and pieces were really cool. It was a lot of fun. I actually have one of the flyers. I'm going to throw that up here. I actually printed this out and showed it to them, which she thought was great. And it was a wonderful little flyer. It was a great night. It was great to have the backstory. But I'll get more into that and more of how the backstories tie in, and how I'm tying in the backstories to the actual overall campaign and all of that. But in the How Haven Did It series, which is my Behind the DM screen side of this. So if you want to know that side, go back and go watch that video. Thank you so much for watching. I will never monetize this channel because I hate commercials. However, if you do want to support me, you can do so by buying my card game down below, 5 Minute Sword Fight, or you can order a dice pouch from me. I do chainmail dice pouches on demand and on order. Or you could even shoot me, sign up for my Patreon. I'm still trying to figure out how I want to help people out. So if you want to sign up as a Patreon and shoot me a message on what you would like to see as free swag or free things that I could do for you, by all means, I'm actually thinking of doing some live videos in the future that the people who are paying for the Patreon might be able to be part of the chat for that. I'm thinking about maybe opening it up as like a general chat, but then also doing some others, because I am an improv artist and I have an entire show that's built on that. So, if you want to be part of that, maybe we can do that. I don't know. I'm up in the air. Thank you again so much. I've been Haven the Hare, and I want to wish you... Oh, you know what? I got to leave you with a segue, don't I? So what's going on with Father Robert and Remy's backstory? What have we not known? What are we going to learn? And does he really want her dead? When's the Hoard of treasure from Green Nest going to get there? Where's it going next after Baldur's Gate? We'll find out. Tune in for the next episode. We'll figure that out. Thank you again so much for watching. I've been Haven the Hare, and may you make all of life saving throws. Alright, test, 1, 2, 3. This is the second test. Can we hear the TV? Can we hear the bunny rabbit? Can we hear the cat? Can we hear anybody else? So that's a test. Test 1, 2, 3. Our brave adventurers have reached Baldur's Gate. Why do I sound like a bad wrestler? Quarantine's getting to me. Alright, this is another test. This is the test with the microphone turned up just a little bit more. Let's see if we get a better sound quality, if it's picking more up or less. We're going to test it. Test. I really wish I could see my friends. And as soon as they see which docks they're going to, they meet them at those docks. And as soon as they they dock the boat, I guess is the proper term, but they reach the docks and they disembark. The men introduce themselves that they are messengers from Suliban, and they're more than willing to escort the adventurers. They're more than willing to escort the escort. I can't say escort. These individuals meet the party at the docks when they reach them and disembark, and introduce themselves that they are messengers from Suliban, and they're more than willing to escort them to his shop. He's waiting for them. And blah 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 blah. Everybody else stands up, and that was the bunny. So really. So Marty, my office mate here, is deciding that this is the perfect time for him to play toss the wooden rod he has to chew on. That is what he's doing.